The internet is absolutely flooded with crazy XRP predictions right now. Everywhere you look, somebody is telling you XRP is going to $100, $500, $1,000, $10,000 per coin. And honestly, most of it is just clickbait designed to farm views, clicks, and engagement. Because the reality is, nobody knows exactly where XRP is going. But what does matter, what really matters, is what the money is actually doing. Not the Moon Boy thumbnails, not the TikTok hype, not the fantasy price targets. The on-chain data is what matters. And right now, the on-chain data is telling us something very interesting. Because according to Santiment, wallets holding at least 10,000 XRP have climbed to the highest levels ever recorded. Over 300,000 wallets. Now, that stat alone is interesting, but it's the timing of it what makes this story potentially very important. Because these large holders are not waiting for the Clarity Act to officially pass. They are not waiting for CNBC headlines. They are not waiting for XRP to already explode higher. They appear to be positioning before the potential catalyst arrives. And historically, that is exactly how smart money operates. Smart money does not wait for the news, it positions before the news happens. Because markets are forward looking and prices do not suddenly move because everybody wakes up one morning and agrees something is bullish. Large players often begin positioning quietly long before the wider public fully understand what is actually happening. And that is why this XRP story is becoming so interesting right now. Because while retail sentiment has been shaky, while social media has been full of frustration and impatience, the on-chain data is suggesting that large holders continue accumulating during that weakness. And that matters. And especially because the Clarity Act is moving closer through the political system in the United States of America. Now, before we go further, this is not me telling you XRP is guaranteed to explode tomorrow. This is not what this video is. This is about following the data, following that behavior, following what the larger wallets appear to be doing. Because in crypto, behavior often tells you far more than the headlines. And right now, the behavior appears to be suggesting that some bigger players may be believing something important is developing in the background. Now, let's talk about the Clarity Act itself, because one of the biggest problems crypto has faced in years is uncertainty. Institutions hate uncertainty. Big money hates uncertainty. It is one thing for retail traders to throw money at memes and hype cycles, but institutions operate differently. They want clarity, they want structure, and they want legal frameworks. And XRP, perhaps more than any other major cryptocurrency, has spent years lying under a cloud of regulatory uncertainty due to the SEC battle and the wider debate around digital assets and classifications. That uncertainty has held XRP back massively in the eyes of many institutional players. So when legislation like the Clarity Act starts gaining traction, markets pay attention. Because even before anything is officially passed, the market begins pricing in the possibility of it passing. This is another thing people misunderstand about the markets, because markets do not wait for certainty. If they did, nobody would ever make any money. The biggest moves often happen during the anticipation phase. By the time news becomes completely obvious and everybody feels comfortable buying, a large part of the move has often already happened. And that brings us back to the whale accumulation data, because according to Santiment, wallets holding at least 10,000 XRP have steadily increased since June 2024, climbing to an all-time high of 332,000 wallets. Now, think about that carefully. Accumulation trend has not appeared after regulation clarity has arrived. It's happened before it. And that is the important part. These wallets are accumulating during uncertainty, during boredom, during frustration, during volatility. While most of the internet is moaning and complaining about crypto, XRP big holders are accumulating. And historically, that is often how larger players behave in other cryptocurrencies as well. Retail traders tend to chase momentum. They wait for green candles, they wait for headlines, they wait until everybody on social media suddenly becomes bullish again. But experienced money often behaves differently. It accumulates during fear, it accumulates during the doubt, and it accumulates when sentiment is weak. Because the best risk to reward opportunities often appear before narratives fully mature. And honestly, this is one of the biggest mistakes retail traders make. They wait for the certainty, but certainty usually comes at a much higher price. Now, let's also be sensible and balanced here. Just because wallets holding over 10,000 XRP are increasing does not automatically guarantee XRP is about to go vertical. That is very important to say. Data gives us clues, not guarantees. But what it does tell us is that conviction amongst larger holders appear to be increasing rather than decreasing. And when you combine that with growing political discussions around crypto regulations around the world, especially the Clarity Act in America, you can start to see why some larger players may be positioning early. Now, another important point here is that 10,000 XRP sounds enormous to some new investors, but at current prices, this is not necessarily billionaire level money. It's just going to represent serious long-term investors, high conviction holders, businesses, crypto funds, or simply experienced market participants positioning to what they believe could happen later. Now, that's the category that I fall in, and what many of you here watching this will probably fall into as well. You've been in crypto for some time now, then you've seen this before, many cycles over and over again. We've had some major pullbacks since the summer. You've seen that the internet is absolutely flooded with negative news. Thumbnails all full of red and doom and gloom. And that often is a clue for experienced people to know that's an accumulation zone. And for those that you've been watching me on a regular will know, I've been accumulating XRP, Bitcoin and Ethereum every single day during this pullback. But regardless of which category you fell into, the trend itself matters. Because on-chain data is one of the few things in crypto that allows you to actually observe behavior instead of listening to opinions online. And that includes my opinion as well, because the data is way more important than the videos being made on the internet, because opinions are everywhere. Everybody on TikTok has an opinion. Everybody on X has an opinion. Everybody has a price prediction. Apart from me, I don't make price predictions, but you know what I mean. But on-chain data usually shows you what wallets are actually doing with real money. And that is why the Santiment data is so interesting. Now, technically speaking, XRP is also sitting around a very important area. A lot of traders are watching that $1.50 level very closely, but some of you might be asking why. Why is that so important? Because psychologically, major round numbers matter in markets. They actually shouldn't. There's no reason for it, but they do. And technically, a breakout above that level could begin shifting sentiment very, very quickly, especially if it happens alongside increasing momentum around the Clarity Act narrative, because markets love narratives. And XRP has been missing a strong mainstream narrative for quite some time now, but suddenly that may be changing. Now, one thing I also wanted to mention here is that one of the analysts inside the crypto wolfpack called Phil, some of you know him as Pip, who many of you may have seen him on the live streams, is actually calling for the possibility of a short-term XRP pullback before a much larger, higher move later on. Now, obviously, nobody can predict the market with absolute certainty. But if Phil turns out to be right, then this also means something very important. You may not have missed the move yet. And that's another thing people need to understand about markets. Big moves are rarely perfect straight lines. Markets breathe, they move up, they pull back, and they shake people out emotionally. And often those pullbacks are where stronger hands continue to accumulate. So even if XRP does see short-term weakness first, that does not necessarily invalidate the bigger picture narrative that many large holders appear to be positioning themselves around. Now, imagine this scenario. Regulatory momentum improves. Media coverage increases. Institutional confidence improves. On-chain accumulation continues. And XRP breaks major resistance levels at the same time. That is how narratives snowball. And once narratives snowball in crypto, things can move very, very quickly. Again, this does not mean XRP suddenly goes to ridiculous prices overnight. This is not one of those videos. But it does mean that the conditions for a meaningful move could begin developing if these trends continue to align. And one thing I personally find fascinating is the contrast between retail emotion and smart money behavior. I make so much content around this. And guys, if you can switch that mindset, things become easier. Because while many people online are frustrated with XRP, the wallets continue to grow. While social media complains about sideways action, the wallets continue growing. While influencers scream insane Moonboy predictions, the real signal may actually be sitting quietly inside the on-chain data. And honestly, this is probably one of the biggest takeaways from this entire story. Ignore the noise. Ignore the fantasy price predictions. Ignore the emotional extremes. Watch the behavior. Watch the accumulation. Watch what money is actually doing, because in markets, actions matter far more than opinions. Now, before we finish, if you do want to get more involved with our community, head over to the cryptowolfpack.co.uk. And to celebrate our 1-year birthday, you can currently use the promo code Happy Birthday at checkout and get 50% off your first month's subscription. Over 2,500 people have now gone through the Wolfpack products, including our courses, the trading view indicators, and the community itself. So if you want to come and get involved, learn with the pack, join in the live streams, be part of the journey, head over and check it out. And finally, a quick shout out to the UK Crypto Podcast, which I am one of the co-hosts of. Brand new episodes drop every single Friday at 7 p.m. UK time. We've had some fantastic guests recently, some brilliant conversations around crypto, regulation, markets, and the future of this space. And honestly, the feedback from you guys has been incredible. At the end of this video, I'm going to link the full UK Crypto Podcast playlist so you can dive straight into the latest episode. And as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the comments. Do you think the Clarity Act will become a genuine catalyst for XRP? Do you believe this whale accumulation data is smart money positioning early? Or are people reading too much into it? Let me know below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, press that hype button, and I'll see you on the next one. And remember this, the strength of the wolf is in the pack.